You was trying to get away from you, man. And you kept shooting him while his back was under the truck. And you kept shooting him, man. You kept shooting him in his back. His back was turned to you, man. He was trying to get away from you. And you murdered him, man, like that. You murdered him, man, like that.
That is a father standing a few feet from the man who killed his son, finally close enough to say it to his face. He is one of 7 parents in this video. And what these families did next is why courthouse deputies stopped breathing easy. Before we get into it, look at 2 moments that tell you exactly how heavy this gets. This is a courtroom in San Antonio, a routine hearing on a normal morning, until the victim's people came over the partition and the whole room turned into something else.
Rivas, who was handcuffed and placed in the jury box, was repeatedly struck with closed fists after members of Soto's family jumped over a partition and attacked him in the jury box.
And this is a courtroom in Michigan, where a man had to sit through the last video of his twin brother's life playing on a screen, and then he made a decision about what to do with what he just watched.
More than a scuffle, a near full-on brawl in court Wednesday as the family of DeRay Robertson, who was shot to death execution-style, went after the man accused of so brazenly and heinously killing Robertson.
7 families, 7 killers, in the same impossible moment running through all of it. The one where the law tells you to sit still while your whole body is telling you no. We're going to walk through each one, who these people were, how the killing happened, what the police found, and what went down the day the family finally stood in the same room as the person who took their child. Let's start in Miami. Case 1, Miami, Kawan Bird. Kawan Bird was a young man with parents who loved him, the kind of parents who show up to every single court date and sit in the front row no matter how hard it is to sit there and listen. He was not living some wild life that put a target on his back. On the night he died, he was not doing anything at all. He was sitting inside a truck in the parking lot of a Miami strip club with another man. The 2 of them just parked there minding their business, the way people sit in cars outside a spot all the time without a thing in the world going wrong. The man working security that night was Lucas Kendall, and he's where this whole thing falls apart. Kendall walked up on that truck, and by his own account, he claimed one of the men had threatened him and that he believed one of them was reaching for a weapon. That is the story he told. Now here's what actually happened.
While working as an armed security guard at a Miami strip club, Kendall approached 2 men who were sitting inside a truck in the parking lot. Kendall claims one of the men threatened him. He says he also believed one of them had a weapon. So he opened fire, killing one of them with 8 shots. 4 of them in the back. Both men were unarmed.
He hit Kawan 8 times, with 4 of those shots going into his back. And when it was all over, both men inside that truck turned out to be unarmed. No gun or weapon, nothing that matched the story he was selling. You cannot shoot somebody in the back 4 times and tell people you were scared for your life. That math does not work, and the family knew it from day 1. Then came the part that made their blood boil, and you need this part to feel what the father felt. After the arrest, Kendall was moved from jail over to a hospital, and his condition fell apart to the point where he was described sitting in a fetal position, naked, not eating or talking to a single human being. So now the courts had to stop and figure out whether he was even in his right mind to face a trial at all. 2 doctors, Luis Quintana and Richardson, both looked at him and both found him competent to stand trial on second-degree murder and attempted murder. The hearing that day really came down to one thing: where this man was going to be kept, and his lawyer, Carlos Gonzalez, stood up and asked the judge to keep Kendall in that hospital instead of sending him back to jail so he wouldn't fall apart again. Now put yourself in that gallery next to Kawan's father. You are sitting there, your son is in the ground, and you are listening to a room full of grown professionals calmly debate how to keep the man who killed him comfortable. That is the line nobody could expect a father to stay behind.
Yeah, but my son is dead, man. My son is dead. He needs to go to prison. He don't need to be laying no mental hospital. He want to play crazy. He wasn't crazy when he murdered my son, man. He wasn't crazy then, but he crazy now. All of a sudden he crazy now. You want to lay in a mental hospital?
That logic is hard to argue with, and it's the same thing you hear over and over from these families, that the so-called breakdown only seems to show up once the handcuffs click shut. Whether that's fair to every defendant or not, you can understand why a grieving parent sees it that way. Deputies walked the father out while the rest of his family watched, and through all of it, Kendall just sat there and took it in without a single word. The case did eventually reach its end, and it did not go the way Kendall planned. He decided to represent himself at trial and tried to lean on a stand-your-ground defense, which is a wild move for a man who shot 2 unarmed people sitting in a truck. The jury was not buying any of it.
He was convicted on both charges and is now serving a life sentence in the Florida prison system.
He was convicted on both counts and is now doing life in the Florida prison system. For Kawan's people, the verdict was the right one, but if you watch how that father broke down in court, you already know that no verdict on earth was ever going to fill the hole that was left. Case 2, Orangeburg, Willie Fields Jr. Move over to Orangeburg, South Carolina, and you meet Willie Fields Jr., 18 years old, a friend of a younger boy named Jalen. There's nothing about the start of this story that should ever end the way it ends. Willie drove over to Jalen's house one day, which was the home of the Jones family, the same way any teenager pulls up to a friend's place to chill for a bit. He never even made it out of his car. He had just arrived and was still sitting in his vehicle when Jalen's older brother, 22-year-old Lindy Lamont Jones, shot him 4 times right where he sat. No real argument anybody has been able to point to or warning. What the brothers did after the shooting is the cold part, the part that tells you this was not some heat-of-the-moment thing they panicked over and tried to take back. Lindy and his little brother Jalen dumped Willie's body in a wooded area nearby and carried on with their night like nothing happened. But a mother always knows when something is off with her child. When Willie didn't come home, her mom used a tracking app to find his phone, and it pinged first at the Jones residence and then again at the street where his car was sitting. That little trail of pings is the thing that cracked the whole case wide open. The next morning, police found Willie's body out in the woods, only 700 feet from the Jones home. Lindy did what so many of these men do once the evidence is staring right back at them. He started switching his story to see which version would stick. He first claimed Willie was trespassing, then he changed it and said Willie was reaching for something, and finally, when none of it held up, he stopped fighting and pled guilty to murder and to a weapons charge. His little brother Jalen pled guilty to being an accessory after the fact, because helping hide a body is its own crime, and the law was not letting him slide on that. Then came the sentencing day, the day the family finally got their chance to speak. Willie's mother, Angela, stood up to tell the judge exactly what was taken from her, and her husband, Willie Sr., stood right there beside her, trying his best to hold steady.
Your Honor, I just want to let you know just what they took from me. They took away my only child. It's been so hard.
And then it broke all the way loose. Surveillance cameras inside the Orangeburg County Courthouse caught the 57-year-old father, Willie Clay Fields, lunging past a deputy and landing a few punches on Jones before deputies could pull him off. And Jones didn't just sit there and take it either. He lunged right back before the deputies finally got between the two of them and dragged everybody apart. For 1 second in that room, all the procedure and all the order meant nothing, and it was just a grieving father and the young man who killed his son. When the dust settled, here's the cruel twist that keeps showing up in these stories. The grieving family was the one who had to apologize. Fields' attorney, Justin Bamberg, released a statement saying the family was extremely sorry to the court and that Fields wished his emotions hadn't gotten the best of him in that moment. The judge cited him with contempt of court, and he picked up assault and battery charges on top of everything else he was already carrying. As for the man who set all of this in motion, Lindy Jones got 35 years in state prison, and his brother Jalen got 6 years in a youth offender facility. Case 3. San Antonio, Ethan Soto. Now we come back to that San Antonio courtroom because the full story behind those few wild seconds is heavier than the clip lets on. Ethan Soto was only 15 years old when he was killed back in May of last year. Police said the man who did it, Victor Rivas, killed the teenager as an act of revenge tied to a drug robbery. So a grown man took whatever beef he had over money and product and aimed it at a child who had nothing to do with the grown folks' business. Rivas was charged in the fall, and months later, everybody came back to the same building for what was supposed to be a routine hearing. Nothing dramatic, just the normal back and forth of a case moving through the system.
Supposed to be a routine hearing for defendant Victor Rivas, charged with killing 15-year-old Ethan Soto in May of last year, but footage shows Soto's family had other ideas this morning.
It did not stay routine, and the reason it went left is on Rivas himself. He was handcuffed and placed in the jury box, and deputies said he gestured towards Soto's family after he was brought into the room. The family was not about to let that gesture slide. Soto's family came over a partition and rained closed fists down on Rivas while he sat there handcuffed and could not do much to stop it. The room turned into a brawl in a matter of seconds. The judge, Michael Mary, hit the panic button and left the courtroom the way he is trained to do during a situation like that. And Rivas had to be checked out by paramedics for an injury to his face. For all the chaos that broke out in there, the one piece of good news is that no court staff members were hurt during the brawl. The anger had one target and one target only. After it was over, the administrative judge over the whole building came out and talked about why these things happen, and honestly, he explained it better than anybody else could.
Think about courtrooms, you're bringing in victims of violent crimes with people that are accused of committing those crimes, and so oftentimes courtrooms can become powder kegs.
And when you really think about how these courtrooms are built, it almost feels like the system sets the stage for it.
4 people, including 2 minors, now charged with assault as well as impeding a court proceeding after this melee in the 144th District Court.
In the end, 4 people, 2 of them minors, were charged with assault causing bodily injury and impeding a court proceeding, both of them Class A misdemeanors. The 2 minors who ended up charged were most likely his own people, kids who were close to Ethan, which means this one killing reached down and pulled even more young lives into a courtroom. That is how a single act of violence keeps spreading long after the first shot is fired. One man's revenge took a child, scarred a whole family, and dragged even more of them into the system, all in a hearing that was supposed to be routine. Case 5. Roseville, DeRay Robertson. The Michigan case is the one where the courtroom outburst had a trigger you could point at with your finger, because this family did not snap over a word or a dirty look. They snapped over what they were forced to sit there and watch. DeRay Robertson was a young man shot to death in Roseville in what police described as an execution-style killing in the early hours of the 4th of July. This was not a fight that went too far or some accident in the dark. Around 3:15 in the morning, officers got to the area of Joy and Franklin and Fraser and found Robertson shot multiple times on the ground. The man charged with it, Jeffrey Clark, was facing first-degree premeditated murder, which means the law believed this was planned out, not random. And the picture that came out in that courtroom was about as ugly as it gets. A woman who had been romantically tied to both men got up on the stand, and what she described tells you everything about the kind of cold this was. According to her, after the shooting, Clark came to her with a threat to keep her quiet.
He proceeded to tell me that he would kill me if I told on him.
Then she said the part that stays with you long after the video stops playing.
He told me exactly what he did to Mr. Robertson. He told me that Mr. Robertson begged for his life and that the only thing he was worried about was that he was on tether.
Let that breathe for a minute, because it is the heart of this whole case. A man begged for his life in his final moments, and the only thing his killer says he was worried about was that he was already on a court tether and might catch a charge for it. That is not panic. That is not fear. That is somebody who only thought about himself, while another human being pleaded right in front of him. And Robertson did try to survive it. He ran for his life when it started, which only makes the whole thing harder to swallow. Clark wasn't even the only person facing charges in this case either. A co-defendant named Tamara Scott was also part of the proceedings, so this was bigger than one man with a gun. Now, here's where the family reached the end of what a person can take. Sitting in that gallery the entire time was DeRay's twin brother, the one person on this earth who shared a face, a birthday, and a whole life with the victim. Then the prosecutors played video of the actual shooting, footage the station itself said was too graphic to even put on the air.
Video of the shooting played in court, too graphic for us to show here, but it was shortly after the video was played that we witnessed this.
The brawl broke out right after that video played, with the twin going straight at the man accused of taking the other half of him. And honestly, even the people covering the story understood it completely.
It's an emotional case. I mean, obviously we have an individual who was shot repeatedly. We have members of the victim's family, the defendant's family were present, so it's no surprise that emotions are involved.
It was no surprise to anybody in that room, and it should be no surprise to anybody watching this video. And that's the cruel design of a trial that nobody really talks about. To prove a case like this, the state has to show the evidence, and the evidence here was the death itself, played back for everyone in the room to see. Case 5, East Haven, Destiny Rumley. Connecticut gives us the freshest wound of the whole bunch, the kind where the family is still walking around in pure shock when the news cameras show up. Destiny Rumley was a 21-year-old mother in East Haven, and the man accused of killing her, 21-year-old Tyreek Black, was somebody she had actually dated. That detail is what makes this one hit so different. This was not a stranger in a dark alley. This was a person she once trusted enough to let into her life and around her child. And the most painful part is that she saw it coming and tried to get help. Court records say Destiny tried to call the police on Black before she was stabbed, but the call only lasted 20 seconds and dispatch couldn't make out what she was saying. What the officers walked into when they got there was a nightmare in every direction. Black had called the police himself and admitted that he stabbed her. Then he locked himself inside the apartment on Old Foxen Road and got combative when they tried to come in. And there was a baby caught in the middle of all of it. Officers had to pull Destiny's 3-year-old child out through a window just to get the little one to safety. Destiny had been stabbed 9 times, and she died at the hospital. When the case finally reached court, the system itself laid out just how serious it was. At his first hearing, the judge made a finding of probable cause for the crimes, including murder. Then, the defense did what the defense always does and painted the full picture of their client's life. His attorney pointed to a hard upbringing, broken foster care, a long history of mental health and substance abuse, multiple diagnoses that included PTSD, prior suicide attempts, and the fact that he had no criminal record and was working part-time, and the lawyer said his client was truly remorseful for what he did. The judge listened to all of it, called the report disturbing, and then set the bond at $2.5 million. That tells you how the court weighted, remorse or no remorse. Both families packed that room and heard the details out loud for the first time, and as Black was being led away, it came to blows between the two sides. The pain in there had nowhere else to go. Speaking for Destiny's side was her cousin, Angel Hubbard, an alderman in New Haven, and she put words to the thing that every single family in this video is wrestling with, whether they say it out loud or not.
Even if he got life, no, seriously, what justice can we really get?
The family said they didn't even know Black all that well, just that the two had dated at some point and that this kind of violence is something they will never be able to wrap their minds around for the rest of their lives. Black was held on that $2.5 million bond and was due back in court on January 14th. And at the end of all of it, a 3-year-old is left to grow up without a mother over something that should have ended with a phone call that got to last longer than 20 seconds. Case 6, Charlotte, Jamari Dixon. North Carolina is where the system itself seemed to twist the knife after the family had already lost everything, and this one might leave you the angriest of all 7. 16-year-old Jamari Dixon was shot and killed last year when a man opened fire in North Charlotte neighborhood over by Stroud Park Court near Oaklawn Avenue. And the damage didn't stop with him. That same shooting left 2 other people hurt, including a young man named Nazir Perry, who was left paralyzed and now has a long road ahead of him that he never once asked for. His own mother said it plainly, that her son is fighting through it, but he's never going to be the same person he was before that day. The man charged with all of it, Marion McKnight, was facing first-degree murder, along with 2 counts of attempted murder. Here's where it gets to be too much for any parent to carry. It wasn't just the loss of the child, it was what came after the loss. According to an advocacy group standing with the family, McKnight spent months taunting Jamari's father after the killing. It all came to a head at a bond revocation hearing inside the Mecklenburg County Courthouse, where the father got into an altercation with McKnight. McKnight ended up in the hospital, and the father was the one taken into custody. But if that were the end of the story, it would still be a lot to carry. It gets worse, and this is the part that turns grief into something close to disbelief. Prosecutors later dropped the charges against McKnight entirely, saying the state did not have a reasonable likelihood of success at trial. So the family watched the entire case against their son's accused killer simply vanish into thin air. After all of that, after the loss, after the months of taunting, after the courthouse, the case just goes away. 2 mothers stood outside that courthouse and let the whole world hear how that landed on them.
How and why would they let this individual free? Why would they dismiss the case?
And Jamari's mother, Lynette Dixon, said she believed the dismissal was retaliation, straight payback for the father confronting McKnight inside that courthouse back in February.
Where's the justice? Where's CMPD? Where's the DA? Where is Mecklenburg County? You're not doing your job. You're making me feel like we're the defendants.
She promised to keep holding the district attorney's office accountable for as long as it takes because her son does not have a voice anymore, so she said she will keep talking loud for him until somebody listens. Case 7, Kansas, Tranjavius Hutton. The last one takes us to a Kansas courtroom for a sentencing that turned into a full brawl right there on the record, and it is a fitting way to close this out because it ties every theme of this video into one room. Tobris Robinson was in court to find out how much time he would serve for shooting and killing Tranjavius Hutton at a mall back in 2022. And this was a murder that happened in broad daylight in a place full of regular people, a mall in the daytime with families and shoppers walking around, which means it could have been anybody's child caught in that. Both sides packed into that courtroom to hear the number. The victim's people on one side and the defendant's loved ones on the other, which is a whole lot of raw, unhealed feeling to stuff into one small room and expect to stay calm. Before the sentence came down, Hutton's mother stood up to talk to the judge, and she did not address a single word of it. She came to say exactly how she felt about the man who took her son, and she said it without blinking.
I'm not saying that we innocent, but you know what I'm saying? I hate him, and I hope something bad happens when he jail. I hate it.
Some people will hear that and clutch their pearls, but ask yourself how you would talk about the person who murdered your child. She told the court that her son's killer had shown no remorse the entire time, no sign that any of this touched him, no hint that he understood what he took from her. And then she looked at him directly and said the part she came all that way to put right on his face.
I hate you, and I hope you die in jail.
Those words set something off in the gallery. And once it started, it moved fast and it got big. An argument between the people watching turned into punches. The fight spilled out into the aisle and grew bigger and bigger until deputies finally managed to pull everybody apart and put the room back together.
This fight breaking out during the sentencing phase of a murder trial between members of the victim's family and the defendant's loved ones. Punches still flying as the fight grows even bigger, moving into the aisle. Until finally, deputies restore order.
Once it all settled down, Robinson was sentenced to 21 years. But here comes the same kicker we keep running into in case after case. The grieving family did not get to walk away clean. 6 people from the fight were charged with misdemeanors, the victim's relatives were charged with disorderly conduct, and his own mother got charged for what the court called fighting words. And a protective order was put in place to try and keep something like this from happening again. And this last case pulls together everything you just watched across the other 6. A family that came to court looking for justice walked out facing their own charges. The system met their grief with a protective order instead of any real understanding of where that grief was coming from. The mother got cited for being too honest about how she felt toward the man who took her child, as if there is a polite way to feel about something like that. Over and over again in this video, you see the exact same thing. The people who suffered the most are the ones expected to sit there and perform calm in the one room where calm is impossible. And the moment they cannot, the law turns right around and adds their names to the docket too. Grief and a courtroom, one more time, mixing into something that nobody in that room could hold back. And that is exactly why these 7 stories keep ending the same way. If one of these stories hit you, do me a favor and let me know which family you felt the most for down in the comments, because I do read them. Click on one of the cards on your screen so you don't miss the next case, because trust me, we are just getting started. Stay tuned, stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next one.